The first time Ethan smiled at me across that cramped coffee shop table and said, "You know, you're lucky I even noticed you," I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't yet understand what kind of man he was. Back then, I thought confidence sounded like truth and arrogance just looked like ambition wearing a nice jacket. Yeah, that was my first mistake. My name is Maya Reynolds, and for most of my adult life, I was the woman people underestimated without even realizing they were doing it. I wasn't loud. I wasn't flashy. I didn't walk into rooms demanding attention. I did my work. I showed up on time, I kept my head down, and I believed that eventually effort would speak louder than ego. That belief got tested more times than I care to admit. I grew up in a small, unremarkable town in Ohio, raised by a single mom who worked double shifts as a pharmacy tech. We weren't poor, but we were one emergency away from panic at all times. I learned early how to stretch a dollar, how to stay quiet when adults were stressed, how to solve problems without asking for help. That kind of upbringing doesn't make you soft. It makes you observant. It teaches you how to read people before they even open their mouths. I met Ethan in my mid-20s right after I moved to Chicago with nothing but a used laptop. 2 suitcases and a plan that wasn't fully formed yet. He was charming in a very specific way. The kind of man who talked about his future like it was already guaranteed. He worked in marketing, wore tailored suits he couldn't really afford, and loved reminding everyone that he was connected. And for reasons I still unpack in therapy, I thought that confidence meant stability. We dated for 6 years. 6 years of me supporting him emotionally, financially, professionally. When his startup ideas failed, I listened. When his bosses didn't see his potential, I reassured him. When he needed help rewriting proposals or crunching numbers late at night, I did it without complaint. Meanwhile, I was building something of my own, quietly. I worked as a data analyst by day and took freelance consulting jobs at night. I didn't brag about it. I didn't post about it. I just saved, learned, planned. Ethan knew I was good with numbers, but he never really asked what that meant. To him, my work was background noise. Useful, but not impressive. Things changed the night he came home unusually energized, talking fast-pacing the apartment like he'd just downed 3 espressos. He told me he'd met someone named Vanessa at a networking event. Old money, real estate family, serious wealth. He laughed while he talked about her like she was some kind of prize exhibit. I remember asking, half joking, "Should I be worried?" He smiled and said, "Relax, she's just on another level." 3 months later, he left. Not dramatically. No yelling, no tears, just a conversation that felt more like a performance review than a breakup. He said Vanessa could offer him opportunities I couldn't. Introductions, capital, access. He said I was smart, sure, but too safe, too small. Then he leaned back, crossed his arms, and said the sentence that rewired something in my brain forever. I can't build an extraordinary life with someone who thinks ordinary is enough. He moved out that weekend. 2 weeks after that, I got a message. A photo of him and Vanessa on a yacht somewhere I couldn't pronounce. Champagne flutes, raised sunlight bouncing off white linen, and expensive smiles. The caption read, "No hard feelings. Enjoy the struggle." I stared at that message longer than I should have. For a few minutes I felt it. The shame, the doubt. That old familiar voice asking if maybe he was right. But then something else kicked in. Anger, yeah, but also clarity. Because while he was busy chasing optics, I had been building leverage. Here's the part he never knew. The freelance work I did had turned into a boutique analytics firm with a small but loyal client base. Quiet contracts, long-term retainers. Nothing flashy, but solid, profitable, and growing. The night he sent that message, I opened my laptop, pulled up my accounts, and realized something that made me laugh out loud on my couch. I didn't need him. I never had. 6 months later, I got a call from a legal firm I'd never heard of asking if I was related to a man named Harold Whitaker. The name didn't ring a bell. Turns out he was my mother's estranged father, a self-made investor who cut ties decades ago after a family fallout no one liked to talk about. He passed away quietly with no direct heirs, except me. I didn't inherit billions. This isn't that kind of story. But what I inherited was significant. Commercial properties, long-term investments, a controlling stake in a private fund. Enough that my financial reality shifted permanently. Enough that the quiet planning I'd done for years suddenly had rocket fuel. I didn't announce it. I didn't post about it. I didn't call Ethan. Instead, I invested. Expanded my firm. Hired people who were smarter than me. Built systems. Learned from mistakes. And one day, a familiar company name landed in my inbox requesting funding. The firm Ethan worked for. They were struggling. Reputation issues. Cash flow problems. Looking for private backing. I agreed to a meeting. When I walked into that glass-walled conference room, Ethan didn't recognize me at first. I looked different. Not richer, just calmer. More solid. When realization hit him, his face did something I'll never forget. Confusion, then fear, then this fragile attempt at confidence. Maya. Wow. Small world, he said, forcing a laugh. I smiled. Sat down, let him talk, let his boss pitch, numbers, projections, promises. I listened carefully, then asked questions, real ones, about margins, about ethics, about sustainability, questions they couldn't dance around. At one point, Ethan tried to jump in explaining a model he'd once mocked me for using. I let him finish, then gently pointed out the flaws. Silence filled the room, the kind that makes people shift in their seats. In the end, I declined. Politely. Professionally. As I stood to leave, Ethan followed me into the hallway. His voice dropped. I didn't know. If I had known, I stopped walking, looked him straight in the eyes. If you had known what? That I was worth more on paper? That's kind of the point. He didn't respond. A year later, my firm sponsors scholarships for students from backgrounds like mine. I speak at conferences I used to attend as a nervous guest. I still live comfortably, not extravagantly. I still work too much. Some habits don't disappear just because circumstances change. Ethan sent one last message months ago, an apology. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, just because closure doesn't always need an audience. Here's what I learned. People will measure you with the tools they understand. Money, status, proximity to power. But those tools are flawed. They miss resilience, integrity, the quiet discipline it takes to build something real while no one is watching. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were better than you? Have you ever been dismissed not because you lacked value, but because you didn't perform it loudly enough? Drop a comment. I want to hear your story. And if you think success is the best response to disrespect, share this video with someone who needs that reminder. Because sometimes the most satisfying victories are the ones you never announce.